Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Forum Series. I'm Chip Rogers, President and CEO of the American Hotel and Lodging Association. I'm very excited today. Two of the very best people, truly nicest people in our industry are with us as we continue our leadership series to really kind of understand what the leaders of our industry are thinking and doing during a time like we've never seen in our industry. Joining us today, Leslie Hale, President and CEO of RLJ Lodging Trust, and Geoff Ballotti, the President and CEO of Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. Leslie and Geoff, thank you so much for being with us. This is the part where I got to first do a little business and thank our sponsors. Folks, please, you see at a time like this, those that are supporting our industry, you see them right here on the screen, keep them in mind. I mean, it is not easy to support financially anything right now because things are so tough. These are the people that make this forum series possible. These are the people that support our industry, support what AHLA is doing. So we truly want to thank them and all of their support, both before the pandemic, through the pandemic, and after the pandemic. With that, let us get into our discussion for today. No mystery to anybody where we sit. 6 months into something that no one could have ever planned for. Fiscally, no one could have planned for psychologically. No one could have planned for emotionally. Our world has changed in a way that we could never have imagined. Our industry has changed perhaps in a way that if we sat 20 people around a room and said, what's the worst case scenario that you can come up with? No one could have come up with something as tragic as what we're seeing. But through this, there are certainly some shining lights, and there's certainly some leaders that are helping make a difference. And of course, two of them, Leslie and Geoff, are with us today. So we do want to jump into that. I would be remiss if I didn't mention what's happening on Capitol Hill right now. We are in the final stretches of conversations involving not just our industry, but all of the American economy and small business in particular, and the discussions that are happening with our leaders in Washington, D.C. If you are ever going to engage, and I certainly hope you do, now is the time. Please go to hotelsact.org. That is your grassroots channel towards reaching these members of Congress. We've got to generate letters and calls and tweets and everything else. It does make a difference. I've already spoken to 3 members of Congress today. All 3 of them said they're beginning to hear from us. So we need more pressure, more calls, more tweets. So let us get into our discussion today. I want to start with Leslie. Sorry, Geoff, ladies first. And I was on one of these recently with you, Geoff, not too long ago. So let's start with Leslie, our guest star. She also is the person that happens to have a Wall Street Journal feature article today. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure that you do. Prior to joining RLJ, Leslie has a storied career. There's so much here. I'm going to read through it. Chief Financial Officer, Executive Vice President of Real Estate and Finance since 2013. She joined after serving at General Electric Capital Corporation and serving as an investment banker at Goldman Sachs. She earned her bachelor's degree in finance from Howard and her MBA from Harvard. She serves as a board member at Macy's and a trustee at Howard University. She's also, most importantly, on our executive committee. Geoff Belotti, who is a star and has been a star of our industry. I use him as one of the greatest examples of the opportunity that's in this industry to start your career at the bottom and move all the way to the top. A dear friend of ours. He has worked all over the world. Geoff, you got too much stuff on here for me to mention all of it. He has served as president and CEO of Wyndham Hotel Group since 2014. He previously served as the chair of U.S. Travel, as the chair of AHLA. He is in our officer group as our immediate past chair, and honestly, one of the best guys that I've known in this industry. So with that out of the way, let's get to know these 2 wonderful people. I want to start with this. The pandemic has changed the way that we live our lives. As you can see right now, most people are working from home or some version of home or not in the office. And it has given us an opportunity to do things and experience things we haven't experienced before. So first question for both of you, I'll start with Leslie. What is a hobby that you have picked up during the pandemic?
So the hobby that I've picked up is something I created myself, or at least I do online room shopping, where I literally will walk into a room, decide what I am missing, and immediately buy it. Whereas in the past, I was not an online shopper. I would make a list and then figure out where I would have to go and try to find the time to buy it. I have truly turned into an avid online shopper. So I literally go by room and shop on weekends.
So before I ask Geoff that same question, one thing I learned about myself, Leslie, and Geoff, well, I guess I knew it about myself, all three of us are parents of 4 children. And my only advice, Leslie, with this online shopping thing, and I think Geoff's children are around the same age as mine, a little older, that once they really learn how to master Amazon, you're in trouble. Because
don't give them your password.
Yes. Geoff, what about you? Pandemic, what have you started doing during the pandemic?
I'll stick with online. I have become a junkie for streaming video. I've been able to do something I've never been able to do before, and that's say that I work out 7 days a week. I'm waking up at the same hour at 5 a.m. But I'd never heard of Hulu before. I'd heard of Netflix, but gee whiz, I've watched every episode since this pandemic began of Breaking Bad, which I still can't beat. Jumped to Billions, to The Crown, to Ozark. Succession was close, and I'm in season 4 right now of Homeland, and I'm going to be running out of suggestions. So I'm curious what you're streaming, Leslie, and your streaming, Chip.
My kids are too young for me to stream, so I watch whatever Disney has on. So that's what we're watching.
I'm embarrassed to mention this, Geoff. All the shows that you talked about, a lot of them I've watched, but I'm almost embarrassed to mention this, but it is really good. I started watching Cobra Kai, which is the current day version of Karate Kid. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but it gets like 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I figured to give it a shot. It's actually pretty good.
I've written that down.
Yeah, Cobra Kai. If you watch Karate Kid, you'll love it because it's actually the 2 actual characters from Karate Kid 40 years later. And they film it in the hometown where I grew up in Marietta, Georgia. So that's interesting. Another quick fire question, in addition to all the watching, what are you reading right now? Start with you, Geoff.
Oh boy, I love to read books that make me feel blessed to be alive when I go to bed. And since the pandemic hit, Unbroken, phenomenal. The story of Louis Zamperini. Escape from Auschwitz was phenomenal. And I'm reading right now a book called, I should know this, All the Light We Cannot See. A Pulitzer Prize winner about a French girl, Mary Laure, surviving the devastation in war-torn Paris, France. It's a beautiful story.
Leslie, what about you? What are you reading these days?
So, I like to read books that sort of challenge the way I sort of think about things. So right now I am reading a book called Crucial Conversations, which is about how do you have tough conversations. In this crisis period, I'm having a lot of those. And then the other one I'm reading is The Art of War, which is a book about just wisdom, but it's centered on the basis of Chinese military philosophy.
Sun Tzu.
Yeah, that's right. And so I found those very apropos in this moment in time.
It's funny, Leslie. We had a leader at ITT Sheridan, Richard Hartman, and it was required reading. He thought it was that good, and we read everything that man ever published. It was he's got a unique way of thinking.
Yep, it's been very helpful.
Pandemic's changed the way we look at life. I mean, we've just already documented what we watch, what we read. But I think it probably has also changed all of us that are in a leadership position. If you're managing other people, working with people, and you're in a leadership role, it's probably certainly changed your outlook. Give us an idea, and I'll start with you, Leslie, of how has this changed your leadership style? Just the distance of the folks that you lead, the physical distance of not being in the same room with them certainly changes, but how's it changed you as a leader?
Chip, I think it's an interesting question. I actually don't think that crisis change your style. If anything, they amplify it, right? Because it's needed more than ever. And my style is one that's been of, being collaborative, but yet deliberate, and also leading from the front. And so, what I would say is that's been more important in the climate that we find ourselves in now, particularly as it relates to communicating. People are looking for, communication that is clear and transparent. They're looking for communication that is, they look to their leaders to sort of read their leaders to see how severe is the situation. They're looking for a path forward and clarity. And so I think that, what I've been focused on is making sure that my communication is focused on those parameters, providing them what they need in this moment in time. And so it really hasn't sort of changed anything, but sort of amplified the things that I've needed to do. I've embraced the reality of what we've had and been very transparent about that. I think in communication, you have to be very tactical so that they can grab onto what they need from a path forward, as well as, being, prioritizing, reprioritizing as you need, and then, communicating in a way that gives them the confidence that you're leading from the front. All of those things that are what I would have done prior, but I'm having to do even more today in light of where we are, because it's what people need from a standpoint of communication.
Geoff, what about you? Have you changed at all?
That's a great answer. Yeah, I think it's made me a lot more self-aware in terms of things I'm doing well and maybe not doing so well. I mean, we all have our weaknesses, and I have plenty of them. But I keep thinking about Wyndham has 5 core values that all of us we talk about all the time, and I'm always asking myself, and they are integrity, accountability, inclusiveness, caring, and fun. And am I doing everything as a leader to drive those 5? I think I've recognized I need to be more patient as a leader. I need to be more appreciative of the teams that are out there. And I need to recognize success. I'm a big believer that you can't over celebrate success in this environment. We've certainly had plenty of them that none of us dreamed of having when we closed our office doors on March 13th. And on the fun aspect and the thanks, saying thank you is the other thing I've recognized I'm not doing enough. And I work really hard with Mary Falvey and our human resource team to figure out ways that we could say thank you to our teams. One of the things that we had before the pandemic hit were called Summer Fridays, and they went from Memorial Day to Labor Day, where we decided to say thank you. We would continue that throughout the year. Recognizing that people are, I believe, as efficient as they possibly can be and working harder than they ever have. We also decided to throw in a employee appreciation day and say, not that we're closing at noon on Friday, one day a month, but we're closing on Thursday, one day a month, and having everybody sign off and make sure nobody's on Zoom from Thursday from 3 p.m. onwards, or on Friday. And so between those two things, it's gone a long way, but I'm always asking myself, what more should I be doing? I guess I've become a lot more focused on what I'm not doing well and need to be doing more of.
My staff was probably taking notes on that Friday and Thursday at 3 o'clock thing, Geoff. So thanks for that. But you raise a really good point. I mean, the expectation now is if you're working remotely, that you're working all the time. And, we used to have these hours, and DC is a city known for their strict hours. And that's all out the window now. Everyone's working all the time. You're connected all the time. And I think it's so important what you just talked about is if you don't set forth as a leader almost an expectation that you disconnect, then for many people, it's not going to happen. But I want to talk about those people for a second. I mean, both of you, I know very well. I know your leadership style. And I know that as with all good leaders, you in many ways take on the pain and the challenges of the people that you lead. And boy, right now, whether it's health concerns, whether it's financial concerns, or whether it's just general uncertainty, the folks that you care about around you that you work with every day, they're feeling it. So how do you as a leader, how do you cope with that, of being able to be empathetic to those, but also be very optimistic, because everybody you lead wants to see that optimistic leader? I'll start with you, Geoff.
Yeah, I think I don't think there's ever been a time in our industry where as leaders we need to listen more. And I heard you say on the call that we had the other day, there's not a day that goes by where you're not listening to a small business owner, a hotel owner, and whether it's listening to a franchisee in terms of whether or not he or she is going to make it through, and returning those calls and those emails, picking up the phone instead of returning the email or the text, and actually physically calling them, or the team member that is stressed and working harder than ever, or unfortunately the team members that we've had to say goodbye to. I've tried to call as many of those team members as I possibly can, just to talk about how can we help? How can I help personally?
Leslie, what about you? How do you deal with this? The challenges that the people you care about around you are feeling, while at the same time remaining that optimistic leader?
Yeah, I would say that, look, this crisis has created stress for all of us. And when you have stress on both on a professional level and a personal level, it's a different kind of stress. I try to be a student of leadership, and Nancy Cohen, who was a professor of mine at business school, had written a book about Lincoln. And in that book, she talked about the fact that Lincoln said the toughest conversations that he ever had were the ones that he had with himself. And I would say that has been more true for me in this moment, in this crisis, than ever before. And in those times where I am having those conversations, I'm trying to focus on keeping things within context, which I think is really important. I think it's also important to be able to look at the bigger picture about what's going on. And then thinking about what I can control and what I cannot control, because I think that you can lose focus if you start focusing on things that are not within your control. And then I also continue to focus on what does my team need from me. And when I sort of put those things keep those together, context, big picture, what I can control, what the team needs from me, that allows me to project out and you said optimism. For me, it's about being sober, about the realities of what we face and what we need to go. And that goes into the point about communication that I was talking about, being able to communicate in a way that feeds the nurturing of what people need they need guidance and clarity. They need to understand what direction we're going in. And so when I go through that thought process, that allows me to be able to stay calm and then project out what our team needs.
I want to talk quickly about mentorship, because it does feed into what we've been discussing of being a leader and being seen not just as a leader, but in some cases individually as a mentor. Leslie, I know you've talked in the past about how important mentorship is and was in your career to this point. And I want to flip that a little bit. Tell us about the mentors that impacted you, but what you're doing now as a mentor towards others. I've ran my own race, but in many ways, parts of my career are very classic, and mentorship has been a very key component for me. There's a number of people who've touched my career, whether it was pointing me in the right direction when I came to a fork in the road and had to make a tough decision, unlocking doors that appeared to have no access to, advocating for me when I didn't know it. And in Tom Baltimore's case, probably getting me out of a ditch or two, that he would say. But I wouldn't be here today without all of these people. So whether it was Jim Torres, my first manager, or Alan Braxton, who introduced me to Tom, or Tom himself, and even Connie Moore, there are a number of people who've been very helpful for me throughout my career. And so I try to pay it forward. A lot of the advice that I have received over the years, I am continuously imparting that perspective on young associates and people that I come in contact with, whether it's in my own business or outside of my business, to really help them understand. Lots of people see the end result of where I'm at, but very few people understand the journey. And so imparting them on what was the journey, how did I do it, and what were the people along the way and how they helped me, and why mentorship and sponsorship is important. I spend a lot of time imparting the wisdom in which I received throughout my career. Geoff, let's talk about really the same topic. I know mentorship is important to you personally, but you've also made it part of the culture and the fabric there at Wyndham. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what Wyndham is doing with mentorship. Geoff, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Leslie, I thought hit the nail on the head in terms of paying it forward. And there is nothing, Chip, as you know, I enjoy more. And especially back to my last point, I'm trying to spend as much time as I can mentoring and talking to colleagues of mine who are now looking for that next opportunity, that next job, having been there myself and knowing how tough it is. To your question on Wyndham, we have formal mentorship circles that are really focused on leadership and leadership skills. What I really enjoy in terms of what we do is the informal, more mentorship sponsorships where we are sponsoring more than mentoring. I think we've all seen too much marginal mentoring in our careers and mediocre mentoring. Not all of us have had along the way the best mentors. We remember who they are. I think having mentors who are vested and want to do it and are actually volunteering as opposed to being told they're going to do it is what we're really focused on with our sponsorship programs at Wyndham.
Leslie, we framed this debate and promoted this, I shouldn't say debate, this discussion about hearing, yeah, we all agree on everything. We should be running the country. In fact, you two can run the country. I'll sit on the sideline and watch. But people are looking to both of you for leadership. That's what this is about. You have an interesting story, Leslie. Certainly you faced hurdles. You talked about mentors that helped you through those hurdles. You're the daughter of two parents without a college education who instilled something special in you that got you to where you are today. Now, clearly you did the work, but they put something in you and you've had a helping hand in many cases. What can you say to young people that are in our industry or those that are looking to get in our industry who say, wow, it looks like the hotel industry is just falling apart. I don't want to be part of that. Doom and gloom, things are never going to return and maybe I need to look elsewhere. What would you say to those young people about starting their career either in our industry or outside of our industry?
What I would say is that I would not look at the situation as a crisis. I would look at the situation as an opportunity of a lifetime. An opportunity the likes of which we will never see, particularly at their age. And what I mean by that is there's so much learning that's going on right now. And that to the extent that you're entering the workforce or you have the opportunity to work into the workforce, or even if you have to go work for somebody for free, whatever exposure that you can get in this particular industry, you will learn what it is to manage in a crisis and lead people, what it is to deal with balance sheet issues, what it is to sort of deal with supply chain issues, whatever that you can do to get in and get underneath someone to learn what they're doing, how they're doing today, it is an opportunity of a lifetime. It is something that you will never forget, and it's something that will set you up to do well throughout your career from learning from this environment. The other piece of advice that I would give is that this is also an opportunity about this very topic that we're talking about today, which is around leadership. I would become a student of leadership in this crisis, whether it is at corporate level, whether it is the state, local level, or the federal level. There's a lot of leaders displaying their thought process, executing on a variety of things. And I would be paying attention closely to what they're doing, how they're doing it, and making mental notes so that as you become a leader and as you move into that role throughout your career, there'll be lessons that you learn from the situation. So I would flip the script from being a crisis into an opportunity of learning. Chip, that's the way I would think about it.
That is a really good point because we're seeing that happen right before our very eyes during a time that is challenging everybody. We can see who's leading and we can see who's not leading. And to your point, making notes as to who's doing it right and how are they doing it. Boy, that will serve all of us well, no matter where you are in your career. Geoff, on that point, I know I'm going a little off script here, but I do that all the time. And you're good at answering off script questions. Walk us through your career quickly. And the reason I say that is because I want people to understand the opportunity that our industry provides people. I feel sometimes we talked about it a moment ago, all of us are parents of 4 kids. I sometimes feel bad as a parent that I feel like I give my kids too much. I sense myself in times like this saying, hey, when I was your age, I was working multiple fast food jobs because I had to. I mean, that was what you did back then as a kid. You were actually lucky when I was 16 years old to get a job at McDonald's. You hoped to get a job at McDonald's. And I feel bad as a parent that I feel like I don't put my own kids through that. I give them too much and maybe they're missing those experiences. Talk to us about your journey through this industry, the experiences that you had and why it's so important to make that journey.
Yeah, I think it is just such an infectious industry. I realized really early on I was working as a dishwasher. How cool the hotel I was in was to work, and it was a mentor of mine. It was Bernard Lambert, one of the best general managers I've ever worked for. When he actually, I had been promoted to a busboy, and then from a busboy to a waiter, and after just a few tables, I suddenly, it's a long story, was about to be fired until he gave me a second chance. And I always said to myself, wow, if I could ever be anyone on this planet, I want to be Bernard Lambert. And I want to be a GM, and I want to have a hotel. And that was always in the back of my mind as I began Long story, not in operations, but I remember another mentor of mine who's no longer around, Mike Bloomer, telling me that, you know, you want to be a general manager. You want that experience. And I tell everybody I talk to, I was lucky enough to talk up at Cornell that a few years back at their speaker series, that the best job in this industry is actually being a general manager. And from there, it took off, and it's been a lot of fun.
I want to switch gears just slightly. I mean, we can't avoid the crisis. It's kind of the underpinning of what we've been talking about. But I want to know specifically, I'll start with you, Leslie. What has it meant for your organization? How has it impacted really what you do, where you're headed, and how has it impacted the people that are around you, the people that work closely with you each day?
You know, this crisis has been, you know, obviously very difficult for all of us, particularly our associates who are at the property level. And I want to express a great deal of gratitude to you know, our associates who are on the front line, who are prioritizing the safety of our guests, as well as helping navigate helping navigate this with our management companies. You know, our number one priority when, you know, this crisis hit was protection of our people, protection of our guests, and protection of our cash, right? And so, you know, we have had to reimagine our business and think about it differently during this. You know, we're used to opening and running hotels, not suspending them and running at this low occupancy. And so, you know, we've had to reimagine how to sort of do that, as well as reposition many of our staff to help us think differently about how to do that. So we've had to repurpose staff members. And I would say, you know, between suspending hotels, as well as instituting cleaning protocols, as well as, you know, cutting costs, those are all things that we've had to do. And it's been very, very tough. I mean, whether it is, you know, at the property level, you know, closing F&B outlets, you know, suspending the size of a hotel by shrinking the number of floors, and then unfortunately having to reduce our staffing. That's been very tough for our organization, because these are people that they know, that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, and we understand that we're affecting lives. You know, but we've had to think about how to sustain ourselves so that we can get on the other side of this, and those are very tough business decisions that we've had to make as a business. But overall, I think that, you know, as I mentioned before, we've prioritized and reprioritized as we've needed to do. We look at what we can control, and try to do that to the best of our abilities. You know, we're in an environment where it's about you know, chasing whatever demand is out there today, and trying to reduce our burn rate. That's a very difficult environment to operate on a day-to-day basis, but the team is rising to the occasion the best that we can.
It's a really, really good point, and a good synopsis of kind of where we are. Geoff, I want to ask a somewhat similar related question about that, and it really centers on that demand. You know, when it seems like every type of lodging conference, hospitality conference I went to for the 2 or 3 years prior to this, there was always a significant discussion about what are the consumer's expectations. You know, what is the guest experience like? Our industry is always going to be one that really focuses on guest experience. But I think we'd be foolish to suggest the guest experience is not changing. So what do you see with respect to the guest experience in the near term, which I would say between now and a vaccine being widely available, and then the long term, say the 3 to 5 years after the vaccine?
I think Leslie just hit the nail on the head with you know, our teams out there and their focus on safety. I think that will be our new measure of hospitality in terms of just how safe our hotels are. And I think that will continue throughout this year and well into next year and really forever. I think there's going to continue to be an investment in technology, the likes of which we've never seen before. In 5 months, we all say we've advanced five years technologically. I was never on Zoom. It is just, there is going to be a demand for more creative technology with a whole lot less friction. And we're already seeing that in terms of our business alone, rolling out a new mobile app with mobile check-in and mobile key technology. I mean, I didn't think we were going to do that this year. The whole use of QSR codes. I'd never used QSR codes. I don't know if you ever had. I didn't know how to use it with my iPhone, but I think that's pretty cool. I think guest experiences, you know, in the coming years, it's going to be continued advancement, the likes of which we've never seen. I don't think paper ever comes back into our hotels. I don't think we ever have collateral. I think it's going to really help our green efforts and our ESG as this moves forward. And you know, I think the big focus now for safety is what we just spent 3 hours talking about on the U.S. travel call is the need for testing and how that advances and how that rolls out. We had a great Abbott Lab presentation just an hour ago, and their new Navic app seems to have a lot of use for the industry, and there's going to be a lot of competition. I think things are going to continue to evolve in that direction.
I think you mentioned the QSR. I like the QSR for a lot of reasons, but when I go to a restaurant, I still kind of want the menu only because my phone's not big enough to capture everything that I want to look at, right? But that's
I don't want to touch the menu.
Yeah, that's an insignificant thing in the grand scheme of things. We don't have a lot of time. You guys are fantastic, and I want to move to a topic that is not only relevant today, but I know personally relevant to both of you, and that's diversity, inclusion, and equity. Leslie, you had a great quote in the Washington Post, and this was a couple of years ago when you got appointed president and CEO. You're humbled and honored to be the first, but you have no interest in being the only African-American woman to sit and hold your current position. From where you sit now, still in that same position, looked at as this amazing leader in our industry, what else can we do? What else should we do to make sure that there are more Leslie Hales? Because believe me, we need them.
Yeah. So thanks for the question, because this is a very important topic. And I would start by saying this. Look, I've also said publicly that I'm not a unicorn, and that I strongly believe that there is a lot of talented people within our industry that, given the opportunity, they too can ascend, you know, women and minorities. I think it's really important to dispel the concept that there is this limited pool of talented people of color. I think it's also important to dispel this concept that there is somehow what you need to do in order to increase diversity is complicated or something unique. I just don't believe that, and I won't feed into that, because if you believe those two premises, then you accept the lack of diversity in our organizations, and I just disagree that that exists. What I would say is that the most important thing leaders in our industry can do is, one, be committed, and two, be deliberate about adding diversity at their leadership, at the leadership level within their organization, on their senior team. Because when you add diversity on your senior team, it will help drive it through the organization, both directly and indirectly. And in order to do that, you've got to provide access to opportunity. And so, as talented as people may think I am, without getting a shot, I wouldn't be here today. And so we need to make sure that diverse candidates are getting access to opportunities, and not just any kind of opportunities. I think oftentimes that women and minorities are encouraged to take roles that are in more of a support capacity, and every role within an organization is important, but not every role will lead to a leadership opportunity. I think the other thing that we have to do within our organization is provide what Geoff and I were just talking about, which is mentorship and sponsorship for diverse candidates. Just because you give somebody an opportunity doesn't mean you're done. When you give them the opportunity, you have to provide the support all along the way. And you know, I wouldn't be here today, and Geoff talked about the people who helped him along the way as well, without the people who supported me. So I think that's very important to provide that, you know, along the way. I think the other component here is to challenge ourselves about what kind of environment are we creating so that we can have diverse talent perform at high levels, as well as keep the retention, because I know that that has been a high challenge as well. And I think that as you think about your organization, you have to ask yourself, you know, are you creating an organization as a true meritocracy? Is your organization one that truly values diverse perspectives? When you are able to look past race and gender and those things, and allow diverse candidates to come to work and bring their whole selves, diverse people are able to perform at extraordinarily their full potential. And so I think it's important to provide access, to provide sponsor, and to make sure that the environment that you are creating allows them to perform at their full potential. I know there's always this concept around, pipeline and finding people. And what I would say is that, people need to really look at looking beyond their normal channels that they would look at. I mean, the example that I would give you is that when Tom Baltimore started RLJ Development, he was sitting in the capital of lodging. And he could have easily, at the snap of his fingers, filled every single role with very experienced, lodging people. But he was committed to diversity. And when he couldn't find it within the industry, he looked outside of the industry. And I'm an example of that. I didn't have a lodging background. I had a real estate background, I had a finance background, but not a lodging background. And so you need to look outside your normal channels. You need to look at people who have the capability and the talent, but may not necessarily be a perfect fit. And I think that when leaders are deliberate and committed to adding diversity at that level, they're going to provide the opportunity, they'll provide the support along the way, and they'll create the environment allowing those people to sort of thrive. If you think about it, this way, we're in the real estate industry. And if you had a transaction that was going to alter the course of your organization, you would put your best talent on it. You would be acutely focused on it. And you would get the outcome that you were looking for, because that's what we do as transaction people. Think about diversity that way. Put your best talent on it. Have acute focus on it. And I'm confident that over time, this uniquely positioned industry can continue to see diverse talent rise.
Yeah, Leslie, you lay that out perfectly. Sometimes I just ask this very simple question. I try to make things very simple from my mind as I possibly can. And I'm like, look, as leaders, we all face difficult decisions. And every time I have a difficult decision, wouldn't I be better served by having more and more diverse viewpoints on how we should proceed forward, as opposed to fewer and less diverse viewpoints? I mean, it really just comes down to common sense that diversity is always going to lead you to better results in the long term. And so hopefully people can wake up to that. And we certainly see that that's beginning to happen, but certainly not at the rate that we need. Geoff, I want to talk about equality and in your leadership style. You have surrounded yourself with a lot of very successful women in your organization. When you go home at night, you're surrounded by some very successful women, as you have 4 daughters and a wife. Tell us about that. I know as a father of 2 daughters myself, I've always looked at it kind of like, why would I ever want any fewer opportunities for my daughters than I would for my sons? It doesn't even make any sense to not want that. But tell us about how you look at that from a leadership standpoint.
I think as Leslie would agree, it's tough, running a company. We don't receive a lot of feedback, except maybe from our board. I certainly do, Leslie, from my board and my chairman, but I certainly receive more feedback daily in terms of how to adjust my behavior from my 4 daughters and my wife. And yes, they're all incredibly and now gainfully employed. We had big news today in the Belotti household here, where my daughter, who graduated from Miami on the floor right below me, I'm up in the attic, just received a job, her first job as a nurse in Boston, and is very excited. And so, yeah, I think surrounding yourself with diverse talent, not just gender, but racial, of course, to Leslie's point, is just so proven and so important. I mean, I'm not there yet from an ethnicity standpoint. I'm getting there. I've gone from 1 to 4 female direct reports in the past few years, and I know there's so much more to do. But I know just my team having that gender diversity, to your question, reduces in so many ways so many of the tensions from our group, and really reduces the groupthink that often goes on, or that sort of unconventional bias, and the increase in innovation and creativity and having those points of view, I think leads in a great way to increase team member and franchisee, and ultimately our shareholder returns and diversity, and it's been great. I just say I think the work that you're doing, Chip, and especially Rosanna Maeda, when it comes to diversity, I mean, we cannot be prouder of the work that the foundation has done over the last few years. When we think about just how at its very core it is supporting not only Black, but so many other minority communities by investing in the communities, and how this empowering youth program, which we haven't talked a lot about since this pandemic began, and it's been having so much success and our management apprenticeship program that we celebrated at, which seems like a lifetime ago, Night of a Thousand Shining Stars, and won't be able to do it in person, but to see those examples of the investments that we're making primarily in women and primarily in minorities has gone a long way. And I'd also just say to everybody listening, there's never been a more important time than to donate to the foundation, because we have up until this year had the opportunity to be giving away millions and millions of dollars in academic scholarships. And those are all going, as we know, to minority students that want to believe in this industry and want to believe that this is now, to your question, Leslie, what I know the two of us believe, a great industry that we should all be heavily invested in. And that comes with your dollars and contributions to the foundation.
Well, we appreciate you supporting that, Geoff, and that is a wonderful message, because you're right. We look back at the work the foundation has done, and Rosanna leading that foundation, and you see who is getting the resources, and it's the people that deserve the opportunity that they may not have otherwise. And it's one of those things where, you know, when I go to a foundation event, when I go home at night, I feel better about myself. I feel better about the organization I work for, and I feel better about the industry that I work in. It's heartwarming. And that actually is a perfect segue to the final question, because we're just about out of time here. You know, during the darkest hours of anything, you probably go back to World War II and ask, you know, people that were living at that time during those dark hours, and I'm not equating the pandemic to World War II, but at least for our generation, economically, this is one of the darkest times, and we're all struggling with it. But even during those times, we see signs of hope. We meet people that inspire us. We understand things that can lead us into a much better place after we come out of this. I want to ask both of you, I'll start with you, Leslie. Tell us a story, a person, an occurrence, something that has given you hope out of this pandemic that you know will serve us better moving forward.
You know, the thing that gives me, hope is that I believe that as a society, that we will have a greater appreciation from human interaction. As a result of not being able to see our colleagues, our family, our friends. And that I truly believe on the other side of this, we will value that human interaction far greater. I think that we will value our mobility differently. An example I have around that gives me hope for our industry and for humanity is that prior to going into the pandemic, I was working really hard to get my mother to try to go to Africa, take my whole family to Africa, and my mother refused. My mother, who is 87 years, I'm sorry, she'll kill me, 78 years old, is now putting together a list of all of the places that she wants to go as soon as she can travel again, including Africa. And the point being is that as a society, as human beings, it's great to see grandma on a camera, but it is far better to be able to hug her. And I think that lots of us have those experiences and that emotion. And that gives me hope about society as a whole, and valuing our interaction with our peers and colleagues, but also embracing the importance of our own mobility. And that gives me hope about our industry and that people will travel again.
Well, thank you for that, Leslie. I'm sure your mother is watching, and Leslie meant to say a young 78. Geoff, what about you? Hope, you're such a positive, uplifting guy. I know there's stories out there that you take with you.
Oh, there's so many. I hundreds of stories, to your point, in terms of the hotel owners we get to talk to every day, Chip. But I would say, to your one person question, you know, the constant collaboration among competitors is what has given me hope the most throughout this pandemic. And I told this story the other day, and I'll tell it again, because there's a lot more people watching this. But you've got a phenomenal incoming chair. You have an incredible chair in John Bortz, and boy, did he pick a tough time to become chairman of this association. But I've never been more hopeful for our industry than listening to that call on that dark day in April, when your incoming chair, and I'm referring to Mr. Mark Hoplamazian, said no one brand should own safety. And we have done so much work that we shouldn't own and share. We shouldn't own ourselves. We should share it with the rest of the industry because of how advanced they were, given how the pandemic hit over in Asia, where they have large managed operations. it is incredible to see the collaboration that's going on right now at all levels in this industry, and that's what makes me hopeful.
That's a great story. I remember that call, and I remember thinking to myself, as the person who gets to serve with Mark, man, I am a lucky person to know that he's going to help lead our association the next year because of that type of attitude and that type of leadership. And that really brings us to the end of this. Two great leaders, as you can tell, two good friends, just people that I have enormous respect for, both Leslie Hale and Geoff Belotti. I want to thank you personally, and thank you on behalf of the entire AHLA team and our entire industry for what you do every single day. So appreciate you being with us this afternoon.
Thanks for having us, Chip.
Thanks, guys. And everybody that was watching, we will do another one of these. Our next one, I know they probably put it in my notes here. Hold on. Yes, they'll kill me if I don't actually read this. Well, you can see it on the screen. I don't even need to read it. Frank Luntz, you have seen him on television across the board. He is probably one of the most entertaining political pundits you will ever hear from. The date was chosen to be right after the next presidential debate. If you watched last night's debate, I might be asking you to do too much to watch the next one. But nonetheless, you should watch Frank Luntz's commentary on it because he has a mind that works like nobody else when it comes to politics. He'll be with us at noon on October the 16th. I'm looking at the screen here. Please make sure you participate in that. Get your friends and family to watch that as well. Leslie's going to have her 78-year-old mother watch it with us as well. That'll be a great series, a part of our forum series coming up on October the 16th. Again, on behalf of my entire team here at AHLA and both Leslie and Geoff, thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you again soon.